So I thought that this would be a good time to talk about purchase considerations for a new computer. And the reason for this is Windows 7 is leaving us. So if you have a Windows 7 machine on January 14th, it's not going to be supported anymore. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean it's going to blow up? Does it mean it's going to go away? Does it mean it's going to be a dinosaur, like you see up here? Or will it be an old car that you can just look at? So, in actual fact, what will happen on January 14th if you have a Windows 7 machine is nothing. It'll still work, your computer will still be fine. But what you will not get is you won't get any of the feature updates, or you won't get any of the security updates. That really means it's not safe to use on the internet. However, if you go off the internet, it's perfectly fine to use at home. Now we have actually, Gail has a Windows 7 machine. She has in her sewing room, and she has some specialized sewing software on there. And to upgrade that from, and she uses it about once a year. So to upgrade that to a Windows 10, the software, the sewing software to Windows 10 is about $300. So we're just going to keep that particular computer as a dedicated Windows 7 computer and just turn it on whenever she wants to use that software. But it won't be hooked to the internet. Now, because you're a member of Silvercom Computer and Technology Club, you're the wise person here, right? People are going to ask you, what should I buy? You will quickly be known around the Silver Age here as knowledgeable people because you come to the club and you learn stuff, and you should be able to give some advice on what computers people might want. So we're going to go through 5 people, and you're going to tell me what computer you would recommend. Now, Fred is a 71-year-old married man who wants to buy a new computer. He knows you are a member of SilvercomCTC and asks your advice. So your choices are over here. You're going to either recommend a Windows 10 laptop, you're going to recommend a Chromebook, you're going to recommend either an iMac. For those of you who don't know, that's an Apple PC. You're going to recommend either an iPad or a Kindle Fire 10. So Fred's asking, you're his neighbor, you're a member of our club, what would you recommend? Fred, what do you think we should do?
Let's ask him a question.
All right, good idea, great idea. Let's ask him some questions. What questions would you ask? Do you own a computer? That's a good one. Do you have a computer already?
What does he use it for?
He says, yes. I have an old Windows 7 machine that is on its last legs. All right. Do you like Windows, and do you use your computer very much? Question, right? Windows is very complicated, and to use a computer, you can use a computer once a week to do banking, check email, and look at sports scores. And that's what he uses his Windows, old dying Windows 10 computer. And he's asking you, as members of our club, what do you think you should do? Well, let's ask him, do you own a cell phone? Very important now when you're purchasing a computer is what cell phone do you have? And he says, no, but my kids want me to get one because I had a heart attack 6 months ago and they live in Australia. Okay. So he's got to get a cell phone. He's had a heart attack. And you say, gee, that's a long way away for your kids to be there. Fred looks a little depressed and says, they never call me. But last time I visited, even the grandkids had phones and did a thing called FaceTime. All right. Now, for those of you who don't know, I mean, in the Apple group, you know what FaceTime is, but FaceTime is this Skype on steroids. Apple has always had FaceTime. If you have an Apple device, you just hit the button and you can talk to any other person in the world that has FaceTime. And they all do, they have an Apple device, right? So Apple started with this, and it's like the absolute best communication software in the whole world. If they had licensed it to everybody to use, then it would be the standard that we use today. But Apple has said, no, you have to only use this on an Apple device. So you can't use FaceTime on a PC or an Android phone, you have to use it on an Apple device. So that sort of limits what we're going to recommend. If he wants to use FaceTime, and trust me, if you're going to buy a phone or you're going to buy a cell phone, and you have kids that have FaceTime, you'll want to get an iPhone because you want to use FaceTime. So here's what Fred's purchase requirements are. Really, as you saw, his computing requirements are fairly minimal. He needs to purchase a cell phone to keep in touch with his family. He needs better communication with his family. But he also had a recent heart attack. So what else might we consider, Dale?
Oh, an Apple Watch.
Correct. So we're going to talk a lot today. Those of you who saw my national broadcast yesterday on wearable technology, we're going to be talking a lot this year about wearable technology and how this can help you with your health. And also, he doesn't like Windows. So I think probably the best thing for Fred would be, I'm going to recommend that you probably get an iPhone. Now you can argue that an iPhone is the most advanced computer in the world, right? It's a very sophisticated piece. It's not just a phone, it's a computer. You could say that that's all he would need, but I think Fred would do well with an iPad. I think that would be a very nice combination if he had an iPhone and an iPad. I think the iPad is Apple, and the iPhone's Apple, and the two would talk, and that would be really a good setup for Fred. Okay, so Fred requires a cell phone, his family uses iPhones and does FaceTime, and his computing needs are minimal. So one of the things that you want to do when you're purchasing a computer is to try to stay with one operating system. It really is a big problem when I see people who have a Windows 10 computer. The other spouse has an Android phone, and they go buy an iPhone. Well, now you have to know 3 operating systems. You have to know the Windows operating system, you have to know the Apple operating system, and an Android operating system, and none of them talk to one another. So you make things very complicated. So when you're considering it, stay with one operating system. Consider if you're going to buy a computer. I had a talk with someone yesterday, and they want to buy an iPhone. Well, he's also considering a new computer, so we have a lot of talk about that and how you might want to stay within the same operating system. As with Fred, consider your family members. If your whole family, all your kids have Apple devices, then you don't want to buy an Android device. And also consider special requirement software, such as Gail with sewing. She has some specific sewing software that only works on Windows. So buying a Mac wouldn't work because the software wouldn't run. So you have to consider all your family members and are there any special software. Okay, the next one. Larry is a 68-year-old retired accountant who comes to Silveridge in the winter to golf and play pickleball. He is a popular guy and the treasurer for many clubs. He uses Excel for his accounting and checks his email every day. Larry doesn't spend much time on the computer and asks for advice on his dying Windows 7 machine. So what questions would you ask? Do you own a cell phone? You know he has a Windows 10 computer. Do you own a cell phone? He's got a Motorola Android that's about 3 years old. Does your wife use a computer? Yes, she checks her email once a week and uses it daily for her specialized sewing programs. All right. Does your wife have a cell phone? No. So, Larry, being an accountant, was born with Microsoft Excel up his butt, right? And his whole life as an accountant is his head is in Excel. So we have to find him a computer that has Excel because accountants only know how to use Excel. His wife uses Windows sewing programs, and he has an Android phone. So what would we recommend over here for Larry? I think a Windows 10 laptop. I think this would be easy for him. He's used computers all his life. You could argue, would a Chromebook work? Probably if his wife didn't need these specialized Windows sewing machines, sewing programs, you might be able to try a Chromebook, but that would be my recommendation. Does anyone have any questions about that? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, Mary is a 68-year-old permanent resident of Silveridge. Since her husband's death 2 years ago, she has struggled with making her old Windows 7 machine work. She is a member of SilvercomCTC and has had her little Chromebooks. Her neighbor and best friend has a Chromebook and she thinks it's great. She wonders if she could get a Chromebook or iPad. She wonders if she should get a Chromebook or an iPad and asks for your advice. Chromebook or iPad? All right, let's ask her some questions. What do you use a computer for? Email, banking, and Facebook. Do you own? So here's the thing. This is why the cell phone thing is so important when you're looking for a computer. What cell phone do you own? She loves taking pictures and just purchased a Pixel 4 to add to a large collection of Google Photos. All right, now the plot thickens. This is all Google. So what over here would you recommend that fit very nicely?
Chromebook.
A Chromebook, yeah. An iPad would be a poor choice. She's asking you. An iPad's great. You could use an iPad or a Chromebook. In this particular situation, though, she's really Android. So her Chromebook would fit this person perfectly, and she has a neighbor with a Chromebook, right? So you see how easy this is once you start asking a few questions. So she has a minimal computer requirement. She has a friend with a Chromebook. She has an Android cell phone, and she has Google Photos. Now, Charles is a widowed fine arts teacher who comes to Silveridge for the winter. He teaches dancing and wants to make instructional videos. Charles has some expensive movie cameras and really wants to get into video editing. He is financially well off and asks your advice on what computer he should buy. Well, what questions do you ask? What?
Let's ask him a question.
Let's ask him a question. Do you own a computer? He says no, but at school we had iMacs. Remember, he's a professor. Do you own a cell phone? Yes, I own an iPhone 11. That's right. He's never going to ask me these questions because he's going to go right to the Apple store, right? So just send this guy video editing with all this stuff in his Apple background. You take him, you send him to the Apple store. That's it. See? So you guys all thought I would choose Chromebooks for everybody, didn't you? You didn't.
You're too smart.
I'm not smart, right? Now the last one I wanted to show you was this. Jerry and Carol want to buy their 6 and 8-year-old grandchildren computers for Christmas. They are worried about the safety on the internet and websites and what one should they get. Gail and I taught Kindle Fire course for a long time, and I just wanted to draw your attention to the Kindle Fire lineup this year. And this is the deal of the century. The Kindle Fire HD is a 10.1-inch screen. It is super fast processor, and it comes with 32 gigs of RAM for $149. But with all the sales that are coming on now, you can pick this up often for $99. This is a third the price. It's a third the price of the Samsung Tab A's that they've got over at Costco for $340. And you can pick this up. Now, I bought Gail one of these last year, and I got her the 64 gigabyte one. It's a screaming fast machine, and they had it on sale I think it was $179 with the 64, and they can have them for $120 on sale. These are always on sale. You can pick these up so cheaply, and they're great machines. They're screaming fast. They have a 10.1-inch HD screen. They're safe for children. You know, they are Amazon, right? So you have to be prepared for the Amazon milieu. If you want to use Google Photos, that you have to use the web version. But so there are some limitations. If you can't use the Android Play Store, you have to use the Amazon Play Store to get apps. But if it meets your requirements, these are just great machines. Cheap. So if you want to get into your kids or grandchildren, then you can pick these up for very, very, very reasonable prices. And again, the way they design them for children on the internet is entirely safe. Now, when you're considering the purchase of a computer, one of the things I want you to consider is whether you need a laptop. For many years, if you look at the laptop down here, for many years, we had batteries in them and you could take the batteries out. In fact, if you look at one of the ones here, I can show you later how the battery pops out. This is not the case anymore. There are very, very few laptops that you can change the battery in. In fact, in most all cases, the battery is soldered or glued into the chassis of the machine as a heat sink. It's part of the problems with laptops is getting the heat out of the laptop. And they use actually the battery as a heat sink. So unlike in the past, when you had laptops and you were able to, at the end of the life of the laptop, change the battery, just pop this out and get a new one. You can't do that anymore. There are only the batteries are all permanently soldered into them. You can't change them. Now, you could take a 5-year-old laptop and send it back to the company and they charge you $400 to put a new battery in. But that'd be sort of an insane thing to do. So you have to consider, so if your laptop has sat on your desk for 5 years and you've never ever taken it off your desk, before you consider purchasing a new computer, I want you to think about, should you really be buying a laptop with a battery? Or should you just buy a PC in a box, right? So you have to think about those things because things have changed now. The lifespan of your new laptop, if you buy one, will be about 5 years. It'll be the life of the battery and that's it, right? Because you will not be able to change that battery. One of the things that you might want to consider is we talked a lot about Chromebooks, but one of the things that you can buy is called a Chrome box. And this is a box that would fit in the palm of your hand, and it has all sorts of plug-ins. So you would plug in a keyboard, or you would plug in a monitor, or you would plug in a mouse, and you can just plug in any devices into this box. The box is very tiny and would fit on your hand. So if you lived in Silverbridge for 5 months and you wanted to fly home, instead of having to take a computer bag, you just take this little box, put it in your pocket, and you would go home and you would have a monitor, you'd have a keyboard, and you'd have a mouse back at your home up north, and you just plug it in and away you go. Right? And then you want to come back down again, you just come down and there's no battery in here, and these come i3, i5, and i7 processors. So you might want to consider looking at this. This is a great thing for if you're a seasonal visitor down here because you don't have to lug a lot of big expensive hardware back up to where you're going.
Right. Does that have a battery or does it work off of
Power?
AC?
No batteries. Power. Yeah, no batteries. Yes? No. Now, the other thing I want you to do is I want you, when you're considering a purchase, I want you to make a budget and stick to it. I just went around and I published 4 articles for you guys in the last week. I went around to Best Buy, Office Max, Sam's Club, and Costco, and reviewed all the, and made some suggestions for you, so you should have all got those suggestions. And I'm going to tell you, you can buy a very nice PC for $600, all right? You probably get some for less, but I'm going to tell you that's a good budget to set. Now you have to set it for 5 years, right? Because at the end of 5 years, you're going to need a new PC or a new laptop because that battery is not going to last. So that's going to cost, that's about $10 a month for 3 cups of coffee. So when you decide that you're going to go and buy a new computer, that's about what you need to budget for. And you have to consider how much time you'll spend using your device, what you're going to use it for, and if you're going to travel with it a lot, like I travel very extensively with my computers, so I really do need a laptop. Now, the first thing when you go to a computer store and you're looking at these devices, what I want you to do is I want you to pick it up and I want you to look at it. Now, this can be a problem because this laptop at Costco has a big bracket down here and it braces it, right? But when you pick a laptop up and the first thing you want to do is open and close the lid. Is it sturdy? You can feel the quality. You want to pick it up and look at it. Don't just sort of have it sitting there and the salesman will say, yeah, you can do this, this, and this. Say, look, I'm going to pick the thing up. Look, when you open the lid up, if you open the lid, you can feel it wobbling. It's not built very well. You can feel it bending as you open it. That's going to give you problems. So pick it up, look at it, decide how you feel about it. Touchy-feely, really important. Now, who makes PCs? This is the list for 2018. Lenovo's 22.5%, HP's 21, Dell's 16, Apple is 6.9, Acer 6.1, Asus is 6%, and others are 20%. I've owned all of these computers except an Apple. I've never owned an Apple, but I've owned all these other computers, and they all work fine. I would have no hesitation about recommending any of these computer makers. About 7 or 8 years ago, HP had problems. HP at first makes printers, but they started making real low-end computers. They didn't do very well at it and had a very bad reputation. So the CEO of HP split the company into two and then made HP Computers a separate company from the printer division. And he said, boys, you're on your own. The printers are making lots of money, but you either got to start cranking out some good PCs or you're going to go broke. And they did. They started making some really good technology. And over the last 10 years, they've actually they've produced excellent product now. So I have no trouble in any of these manufacturers. I will draw your attention to Lenovo. I've been spending the last couple of days looking on Lenovo's website, the US site, and they have some screaming good deals right off their website from Lenovo USA. So you may want to look there because they have some very, very good deals.
Is that owned by IBM?
IBM used to make ThinkPads and Lenovo, right? They actually make ThinkPads. Then Lenovo, who's a Chinese company, bought them, and they're making that one China. Now, the most important thing that we're going to talk about today is your screen. Okay, this is the most important consideration you need when you're looking for a computer. Is you want to look at how big the screen is. Now, the first thing is, what size should you buy? Now, folks, we're all getting older. Lots of things don't work as well as they used to. And one of those things that don't work so well is your eyes. So if I ask everybody here, do you want a 13, do you want a 15, or do you want a huge monitor, you're all going to say bigger is better. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, but what should you buy? Bigger is better. Should you get a flip screen? Should the screen be a 2-in-1? Now, most computers that you have will be a clamshell. We call this a clamshell, all right? But if you want to flip it, this now becomes a tablet, okay? This is what we call a 2-in-1 or a tablet. So you need to decide, Do you want to have this device or do you want to have this device? Now, let me give you some clues. If you are a Windows 10 user, you're going to be buying a Windows 10 machine, let me ask you, is there anybody in this room that has ever used Windows in tablet mode? Nobody. You do, Edith did. I was at Best Buy on Friday, and there was not a soul in Zen Mall, there's not a soul in the store, but there were 30 very aggressive salesmen, so they all kept running up to me, saying, you know, can I help you, can I help you, can I help you? And I said to them, I said, tell me about this Windows 10 machine that flips and does this. I said, have you ever used Windows in tablet mode? Not one of them. Now, I tried it for a couple of weeks, but Windows in tablet mode is creepy. It is weird. Like it is, you will never figure it out. It is a real weird thing. So unless you have a burning desire to have Windows, and so the flip screens are all about $200 more. So if you want to get something that's this and does this, then you're going to spend about $200 more. I'm going to suggest you save your $200 and I'll tell you what you're going to do with it. But you don't flip it unless you have some bizarre reason that you want to do that. Now that's different if you're going to buy a Chromebook, all right? So if you're looking at buying a Chromebook, flipping is important, I think, because most of the programs you're going to be running on your Chromebook are touchy-feely things. They're coming from the Android world, which of course is your phone. And your phone is a touchy-feely thing, right? So I think a touch screen and a flip on a Chromebook is important. I think that's something you should consider when you're buying a Chromebook, but not a Windows 10 machine. And should it be a touch screen? I would say no. I'm going to say that there's probably no reason that if you have a Windows 10 machine that you would want a touch screen because you're not going to flip it or you're not going to use it in tablet mode, where that's, of course, not true with a Chromebook. The other thing you should consider when you're going around looking at these devices is how bright the screen is. All screens are different. Now they actually measure the brightness, and the brightness is measured by an amount called nits, N-I-T-S, nits, and it ranges anywhere from 250 to 400. This is a very bright screen. This is about 150 nits. Now, if you ask the salesman at Best Buy what a nit is or how bright the screen is, he'll look at you in a blank way and not know what you're talking about. But you can say you're from SilvercomCTC Computer and Technology Club, and you know what a nit is. But the best thing to do is just to look at the screens. If you go up and down the aisle, and they've got all these laptops there, you want to look and find out which has a brighter screen. And maybe take it outside if you're going to leave your computer outside, but have a look at the brightness of the screen because they're all different. The other little trick you do, if I had a computer and I had a row of 10 of them at Best Buy, all stacked up like this, and I wanted to get rid of it, it was a dog, what would I do? I'd go over here and I'd turn the brightness up to maximum, right? You can adjust the brightness. So when you walk down that row, you're going to see the brightest computer and you're going to think that's great. And you're going to buy that old dog. So one of the things you want to do when you're looking at it before you buy the thing is you want to make sure the brightness is set down to medium. So you're comparing apples to apples and you're not sort of getting somebody that set the brightness up. But brightness is important because again, as you get older, it's easier to see that something's brighter. Now we're going to talk about screen resolution. You probably all are aware that there's different resolutions that we have now. So what most computers sold today will have is they'll be full HD. Now pixels are little dots on the screen, and the more pixels you have, the better the picture, right? So you will find still some of the cheaper laptops will have the 720, which are really about 1280 by 720. you'll see some of the lower end laptops will have this. This really doesn't give you a very crisp picture. Almost all the laptops I looked at in the last couple of weeks, all were 1920 by 1080. That's the full HD. You will see some laptops coming out now with 4K. And you'll even see some of the new laptops having OLED screens, all right? Julie and I talked about this last week because he bought a new computer and we were talking about whether we should have got the 4K, and I think I agree with Julie. We're really talking about a very small screen here. And when I was at Best Buy Friday, I looked at an OLED versus an HD, and I had the two sitting side by side, and I couldn't honestly tell you anything. So you're going to pay a lot of money for the 4K, and I don't think it's worth it. I didn't see a lot of difference between the full HD and the 4K. But watch that because you can see certainly some 4K coming down. So, since we all have problems with our eyes and we all want bigger computers, what we need is an external monitor. I have an external monitor here, I have an external monitor at home. You don't want to get a 17-inch computer. That's, this is a 14, this is a 14, this is a 15, but you won't often find 17-inch computers are hard to find because they're big clunkers. They're really big clunkers. This in a 17, you probably couldn't even lift the thing if it was 17 inches. It's a clunk, You really don't want to get a 17-inch laptop because 17 inches, you still can't see the screen. You need a 27-inch monitor, right? Now you can get one or two, I don't know how many you want to plug in, but you will be so happy because you can see, right? That's important. See. How much? Well, this is at Costco. Last week, you get a full HD monitor for $169. So instead of getting spending $200 on a 14-inch screen that flips, save the $200, still get a 14-inch computer that'll be nice and you can travel around with it, and spend $169 on a monitor, on this monitor. And this is 27 inches. If you really want to get big, you can get one for 32, and it's like $200. So external monitors are so important. I think everybody should have one. Now, Costco also, being sort of a leader in technology, brought in 4K screens. So you're going to start to see 4K screens coming in. And of course, these are more expensive. Complete and utter waste of time. Because unless you have a computer that has an output with 4K, this is not going to display in 4K. Right? So don't go over to Costco and say that very few people should get this. If you want to get a bigger 32-inch monitor like this, buy the HD and they're about $200. All right. What processor should you use? The least of your worries. Don't even think about what processor. Let me tell you, don't even worry about it. And let me explain why. There are 3 companies now that make processors. You all have probably heard about Intel. There's AMD, and the one that you're going to be hearing more about is called ARM. Now, the ARM processor was designed in Britain, and it runs on a whole different technology. It runs on RISC technology, and it's in most of your phones. Most of the phones that you have right now have an ARM processor. This Chromebook that I have here has an ARM processor in it. Microsoft just this year in their new Surface laptops have introduced those with an ARM processor. The feeling is by 2024, the ARM processor will be in most laptops around the world, not Intel. So and this is the architecture's better and you can run a lot cooler. So watch for this. You'll start to see this coming up. We then have, of course, AMD and Intel. I've got a slide out of sequence. It'll come up in a minute. How much RAM with Windows 10? More the better. Most of the computers you buy will have 8. See if you can put more in. All right, let's come back to Intel marketing. All right, so if you want to talk about complicated stuff, I can bring this slide up, but you're not going to want to do that. We can spend hours talking about Intel processors. But you all probably have heard of i3, i5, and i7 processors. In fact, if you look at your computer, if you look on the little label here on all Intel processors, there's a little sticker and it says it has i3, i5, and i7. Now, this has been out for 25 years. Has anybody wondered, is this the same thing we're using 25 years ago? i3, i5, and i7. In actual fact, there is no such thing as i3, there is no such thing as i5, and there is no such thing as i7. This is just a marketing thing that Intel has used to try and label their chips. In fact, the core processors that are used in these 3 classes change monthly. So what is called an i3 this month will be an i3 something different the next month. So this is just a marketing thing. So when you go to the store, and you want to buy a computer, you're going to say, should I get an i3, an i5, or an i7? Well, if I asked you the difference between an i3 and an i5, you'd say an i5 processor runs faster. And you would be right. You'd be right. An i3 processor, an i5 processor will run faster than an i3. Most of my life, I usually have i5 processors. This particular laptop here, this is a Windows 10 I bought 2.5 years ago. This is an Asus. It has an i3 processor in it. Now, I've traveled around the world. I've given many conferences. I've made over 30 YouTube videos this summer, and I did it all on i3 processor. So it runs fine. So yes, an i3, an i5 will run faster. But for people, what you're going to be doing, it doesn't matter. Now, if I ask you what is an i7 processor, you're going to say, well, it runs faster than an i5, right? Not so, not so, not so. So here's what happens is what Intel did to make an i7 processor is there are 2 types of people who want specific types of computer speed, and they're gamers, and there are people that do dedicated large video editing. I mean, I made 32 videos this summer, and I use an i3, but it would have been faster if I had an i7 because it does video editing. So what happens is if you look at computers, the computers are a bunch of language. And to project that language on the screen, you have a video card. Okay? So all these computers, remember in the old days when you had boxes with computers, you had cards that would go in, and that was a video card. Well, we got into laptops, and now it's a little thing on the motherboard. But what happens is Intel decided to speed computers up. If you wanted, they would then do processing of the video output in the i7 chip. So instead of the information flowing to the graphics card and then coming up onto the screen, they would take part of that and they'd run it through an i7 chip, and it would do processing and it would speed up 2 things. If you're doing virtual reality, gaming, or you were doing video editing, it would speed it up because the actual processing would be done on the i7 chip. So if you do those things, then yes, an i7 might be good for you. But how do you make an i5 chip? You take an i7 chip and you turn off the video editing part of the i7 chip. So all i5s are really just i7s, but they have that feature turned off. The reason that you don't want to get an i7 chip if you're not using that is the heat. Heat is the biggest problem with laptops. And i7s, Bill needs, it's too bad Bill isn't here this year because he bought 3 this night. He bought 3 i7 machines and he sent them all back. He said, "Ron, I could fry an egg on them. They're so hot." So if you're looking at sales, if you're going into the store and you're going to buy a laptop and you find a nice one that's got an i5 or an i3 processor, and you think, "Yeah, that's for me." The salesman comes along and says, "Oh, I can give you one for i7 for a less price." Don't take it, all right? Because heat is not your friend if you have a laptop.
Yeah, but they're nicer in winter because they keep your lap warm.
Oh, so Dale brought up a very good point. They keep you warm in winter. Never put your laptop on your lap. It's just going to heat it up. And often there's vents at the bottom here, and that's a bad thing to do. Don't take it to bed with you and put it on the bed covers either. This is a slide I was looking at that was out of shape. This is AMD processors. You'll see that this year with their Ryzen processor and the new Intel is always battling out with AMD, and Intel was great for these years, and AMD struggled, and now Intel's struggling, and AMD is going ahead. So you'll see lots of AMD processors this year. Now, what type of hard drive? If you're looking at hard drive, what type of hard drive should you get? Well, there's 2 types of hard drives you can have. You can have a spinning hard drive, or you can have a solid state hard drive. What's a spinning hard drive? This is one of these, this is a spinning hard drive here, and it has a whole bunch of platters. Okay, and these platters spin around at a bazillion revolutions per second, right? And there's a little arm that goes back and forth and reads your data. And so these are spinning around and around and around, going like crazy. Now, a solid-state drive is like a RAM module on your computer. There's no moving parts. It's just like a thumb drive, right? So it's a solid state. So should you get a spinning drive or should you get a solid-state drive? Well, fortunately for everybody, is most computers I've looked at in the last 2 weeks all have solid-state drives. This is pretty much going out of not a lot of them being put in now, but you still will see them. And the reason that I don't like, now there's 2 reasons why we should not get a spinning drive. The first reason is the solid state drive will run faster. Now that is not initially true when you get a computer, but the solid state drive will for sure in the long term run faster. So that's something. But yeah, that's true. But what I don't like about the spinning drives is this. Most of the computers that you see, if you go down to the computer stores and they have a spinning drive, will have this drive. This is a 1 terabyte drive, right? Now, this is at Best Buy. I can buy this drive full price, not on sale, for $50. So that probably means Best Buy buys it for $25, which means if I was Hewlett Packard buying 1 million of these drives, I'd probably get them for $10 or $5. Now, on what planet is anybody born that thinks for $5 or $10 you can make something that's going to spin a bazillion revolutions per second and last 10 years, right? Like, give me a break. I mean, not on planet Earth, but I'm going to tell you that that's the problem. So when you buy a $600 computer and they're going to put a $10 spinning drive in it, this is just not a good thing. And if you actually look at the statistics on spinning drives is the first year, 1 in 10 will fail. Okay, so the first year you have a spinning drive, 1 in 10 will fail. Then they seem to last till 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, then there's about a 10% failure rate per year, and it goes up exponentially. So if you have an old Windows 7 machine that has a spinning drive, you've had it for 8 years, well, back your stuff up because you're going to lose it. So solid state drive, please. I think that's the way. Now, once you get your new computer, this doesn't apply to Chromebooks, I'll tell you that in a minute. But if you buy a Windows 10 computer, you have to move your data from your old computer to your new computer, right? You've got all your stuff on your old computer, and you have to just move it somehow onto your new computer, and that may be reinstalling programs. So there's some stuff you got to do there. The second thing you're going to have to do is apply updates. So in Windows 10, if you bought a machine that was made about a year ago, you'll have to make sure that you go through and get all the feature updates, which may be some problems, and that's where Dale will come in and help you. So these are updates that you'll have to put on. Make sure the auto updates is turned on. Now the other thing you have to do is if you get a machine that has an Intel processor in it, it for sure will have McAfee on there, right? Because Intel owns McAfee, and the thing Intel puts their chip on, you'll get a copy of McAfee, which will drive you nuts, and you should delete it as soon as you get it. So you want to really get rid of McAfee on there, because as soon as you get rid of McAfee, Windows has its own security program which will turn on, and that's what you want to use. You want to install a password manager, and then, particularly HPs are bad for this, you'll want to get rid of all of the bloatware. There's all sorts of crackle stuff that they put on those machines, and you want to delete it all. Okay? And then you'll want to give each user in your an account. So there's a bit of work to do here, and of course you buy a Chromebook. I just bought a new Chromebook yesterday, no, 2 days ago.
For yourself?
I did. I bought a Pixelbook. I did. Yeah, I bought a Pixelbook. So, and so all I did is I logged on, put my username and password in, and it took probably 30 seconds to update the software. It took another 25 seconds to load the Chrome browser, which had all my apps and all my programs in there. So I was up and running in 2 minutes.
So where's your other 3 Chrome's?
I don't know. I think Byron's going to buy one.
Who is?
Yeah, Byron's going to get one. He's just arriving today, so he's going to get. So anyway, so you get a Chromebook, not a problem. It's so simple. Windows 10 machine. Well, we'll talk about some of how you might want to tackle this in a minute. Just in closing, I want to go over computer ports because everybody gets a little bit confused about this, okay? We're going to talk a bit about computer ports. Now, if you look at this is called a VGA port, and this is used to display graphic information on a screen like this. You will not see this anymore. This is old technology. It did not transmit sound, it only transmitted images. And this is how you plugged old monitors in, how you plugged display screens like this, and that's called a VGA port. This is my old 10-year-old Windows 10 machine, and you'll see it has a VGA output on. So if you want to come up and look at it, you can see it. You will not see this on any computer that's made in the last 5 years. That's called VGA. I keep this. I used to use it when I went around to computer clubs because a lot of them had projectors that only had VGA output. So but you won't see this anymore. But what you will need is this, and this port is called HDMI. Okay. So take a look at that, and that's called an HDMI port, and this transmits picture and sound. So if you plug your monitor into your HDMI port, and your monitor has sound capability, you'll have sound. Now you can't see this very well, but there's variations in HDMI ports. You have this is the standard, this is the mini, and this is the micro. Mini and micro. And that is this computer as a micro port. So if you come up afterwards, you'll see I have an adapter because I have to adapt it to go onto this projector, right? So the HDMIs you'll find on different computers will have different sizes. My advice, and the reason I'm looking at, oops, I shouldn't say this to my wife. I'm looking at new Lenovo's, is I want more ports. I do a lot of presentations, and I go travel a lot, and having only one port on here is not so good. So anyway, this is called HDMI. Now this is an Ethernet port. This is what connects to your router, and this is what it looks like. And this is what it would look. This is HDMI here, and this is called an Ethernet port. Now, if you have your laptop and it's sitting on your desk, and you have your router right next to it, I would strongly encourage you to get a short Ethernet cord and take it from your router and plug it directly into your computer and not use Wi-Fi. All right? And I see this over and over again where someone has the darn router right next to the computer and they're using Wi-Fi. If you plug it directly in, it's faster, there's no interference, and you don't screw around with Wi-Fi. And it's so simple to do, and all computers, everyone will have one of these, right? So don't use Wi-Fi if you don't have to. Now, if your router's in the kitchen and your computer's someplace else, fair enough, right? But plug it in.
Yeah, what?
Plug it in, it'll be faster,
Yeah, the meeting going on in Arizona. They've got a meeting going on in Arizona Club.
USB.
Gotta rent a place for a couple months out there.
Universal serial bus. Now, what does that mean? That's a bit crazy because there's nothing
Their
here.
computer,
All these
Constitution,
all
proposed Constitution, vote on February. There's a letter in there.
This is the standard
One
US.
challenge with the
Actually,
Jen,
call it Type A port.
they
And this is
a couple
what.
weeks ago, then they know last week, and
Okay.
back this week.
Now, for the standard type that's really slow, I would recommend plugging your mouse into this.
Oh, he was long-winded
Your
yesterday.
mouse.
So what's this computer here?
Now,
That's Shelley's.
Okay, I thought so.
USB Type A that's USB 3.
All right, I gotta go to.
You'll notice that because it looks the same.
Tomorrow night.
It'll look the same, but it'll often be marked with blue. All right? So it'll be blue, or it might even have a little SS thing next to it like this. And what you should do, and most of your computers will have a USB Type 3, is if you have a hard drive you're plugging in, plug it in here, because it's going to run 5 times faster than the Type A, right?
Well,
So don't plug your hard drive into here and your mouse into the other one because you want speed, and use the regular Type A for something slow like a mouse. And if you have a hard drive, plug it right into the USB 3, which will be blue, and it might have a little label on it. And usually on your computer there will be lots of these USB ports. Okay. Now, the next one that is maybe a bit confusing for you is the US Type C. And on my on this screen, and on my new Pixel book, and on this, there is only a Type C port. There are no USB ports. There are no Ethernet ports. There's nothing. There is only a Type C port, and it's a little circular plug like this. Now, this is what most manufacturers are using now, and this will do all of them. You need an adapter like this, but it will do picture, sound, power, and Ethernet. Okay, so it does all of them through one port, and that's how they make these things smaller and lighter, because they don't have the big motherboards, because they can use Type C. And you'll see this in a lot of computers now, and it's a circuit plug. It looks different. Excuse me. And the last is called a Thunderbolt port. Again, it's a USB port. port. But if you look here on this example, you will see this little arrow here, this lightning rod coming down, and that indicates that this is a USB, but this is a Thunderbolt. You don't see this, you only see this usually on very high-end laptops. You're not going to see this on, but if you didn't have this, you should look at it, because this is like USB on steroids. It runs 8 times faster than a USB 3. So you really need to look at your USB ports on your computer. If you have a Thunderbolt, you for sure want to make sure that you plug your portable drive into this really fast connection here. Don't plug it into a regular Type A. So they're all different, and you need to look. And the last one that's different is some of these USB ports charge. They have power going out. And if you look at on the side of your computer, you'll see a little battery. And that means there's power on this. So you can charge other devices by plugging it in here. So if you have a cell phone and want to charge it, if you plugged it into a port that did not have this capability, it wouldn't charge. So not all USB will charge. So you have to look for this little arrow here and make sure that it charges. And if you have something you want to charge, that's what you need to do. Okay, now, where to purchase your computer? This is another question I often get asked. Now, these are 4 commonly, and here's my thoughts on it. I like Best Buy. I think their salesmen are very knowledgeable, and if you want some information, they're usually pretty good. I have no idea why when I went to the Best Buy up on San Antonio Mall there, like it was just insane. Their prices were so expensive. They all had real high-end equipment. I didn't see any good buys up there, so I don't know why that was so. It might be on the east side here that they have better prices, but generally I find they have their salesmen are pretty knowledgeable. I really like Office Depot. I went down to Office Depot and saw some and talked to the manager down there, and he's a great guy. And they had some really good deals at Office Depot. I think that's fine. I did go to Staples, but Staples usually has some pretty knowledgeable people. My favorite store in the whole world is Costco. I think their salesmen probably are pretty average, maybe not quite average. So now all these stores, Best Buy, Staples, and Office Depot, usually have a 2-week window in which you can take it back. There's no questions asked, no restocking fee. If you don't like that machine, take it back. Costco has the same thing. If you don't like it, take it back. Sam's Club, you can take it back. I have bought computers on Amazon, and you often get some good deals on Amazon, but you have to be very, very, very careful. Unless you know exactly what you're buying, and you have to be careful about return policies. And unless you're a real Amazoner and you really know a lot about computers, I think it's very dangerous to buy a computer on Amazon. Because you may not be able to return it, you might not get what you think. So I think unless you really know the system well a bit, I'm not so keen on that. Oh, the other one that I haven't put on here that I thought about this morning was Walmart. Walmart salesmen, forget it, they don't know anything. But Walmart has probably one of the largest inventories of computers in the United States. And they sell a ton of computers, but it's all online. It's all online. And they have a great return policy too. So check Walmart, check Walmart online. They have an incredible selection of computers. All right, the last slide before we open it up for questions is what about the extended warranty? Should you get an extended warranty on your computer? Well, I've never bought one. I've never bought an extended warranty on a computer. I think it's really up to you. If you buy a computer for $500 and they want $50 for an extended warranty. That just seems to me like a ridiculous thing to do. Most computers come with a 1-year warranty, and if they last a year, they'll usually last. And so I personally don't buy extended warranties. Now, here comes the next. The next is the setup fee. So in that slide that I showed you, if you buy a Chromebook, your setup is your email and password, poof, and that's it. That's all you have to do. But if you're going to buy a Windows 10 machine and you want to go through all those other things that need to be done, if you don't feel you can do it, then Staples, Best Buy, and Office Max all have tech people there, the Geek Squad, that will actually do this, and they have a setup fee. They will transfer all your data. They will put all the information back on your new computer, and set it all up for you. Cost that's usually around $120. So, yes, oh, of course, Vail does it a lot cheaper.
Yeah, just put my initials in front of Senate.
So for $10 membership, Vail will help you with that. Randy?
You forgot the best candy store in the whole place.
Oh,
The Max.
that yeah.
You want service.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it.
Well, you're gonna have to wait 3 days to get it because it's so busy. Yes.
If you have an old Apple and you buy a new Apple, they will mirror image it on the new one for nothing.
Right. So if you have an old Apple and you want to take it, Apple actually does this very well. You know, they do it very well. If you have your Apple account and you set up this and have it for a long time, they make it very easy to transfer data from one device to another. And Apple does it extremely well. It's one of the great, and Windows is slowly converting to this. You're seeing this more and more as we're moving on to different versions of Windows. But Apple does it very well. And it's free. And it's free. But you got, man, that Apple store is busy up there at Santan. There's just one Apple store right here in Santan. I think it's just one store. Okay. I think that's it. That's it.
Chris, one more question.
Yes.
Where am I going to get that fire pen? I know.
Well, if the Fire 10,
I want to get.
watch on Amazon. The question is, where do you buy the Fire 10? If you want to buy one for $99. Watch, because the sales are all coming up this month, right? There'll be tons of sales, and Amazon will have that now. Walmart, Best Buy, and Target all have them as well. And I assume when Amazon drops the price down, I assume they'll put them on sale in those stores as well. So you can buy them in the store, or you can buy them online. Yeah, they're great, man. Cheap, and they're great. Yes.
Three quick comments. So your local computer stores will transfer your data and your programs. For instance, lights up here, BYTS, not Disney money.
Yeah.
I get a fixed fee, $55. I don't even bother with it anymore. I just hand them money and say, do it. And I also check your machine, et cetera. So that's, you get it back in 24 hours. So it's not a commercial, it's just how it works. Okay, the other thing is, sometimes when you're buying a computer, the ones with a spinning hard drive are really been discounted, and all the rest of the machine is just fine and fast. I've actually bought a computer, didn't even take it out of the box, took it off the bytes for $100 or $125, and put a fairly, I think, a 500 gigabyte SSD drive in it, and I saved $200 on buying a computer. And I wound up with give them an extra 55, put everything in. I go home 2 days later and it's done.
Yeah, the only thing I say, but I think that's true in the past, because now in my review the last week down here, they're almost all SSDs.
That's good.
Very few SD cards.
Right. Now, the last thing is about screen resolution. I have bad eyes, and I want it like a 15-inch screen on my Windows computer. What I found out was, if you get a bright enough screen and a high enough resolution on a smaller size screen, your eyes or I see it better than a bigger screen. And I'm going to make a comment about nits too. I've been studying nits, meaning how bright the screens are. Most of the machines now, if you want a decent bright screen, you need somewhere in the vicinity of close to 300 nits. 300 enough. Some of the ones that are at 250, 150 is junk. You can't even see it. So you can't talk to people about this because they don't know what it is unless you go online and look. And your idea about going down the line and look is a wonderful idea. That's it.
The other thing I forgot to mention is don't buy a television monitor. If you go to Best Buy or you go to Costco, they're sitting side by side, and it'll be a 27-inch computer monitor, and they'll have a 27-inch television monitor. Don't buy and it'll be $50 cheaper. And seniors being seniors will always buy the $50 cheaper one. But don't do that because you want to buy the computer monitor because of two reasons. It's higher resolution, and the frequency refresh rate is different on them. So your computer monitor will run faster and it'll look better than a television monitor. So be careful. They got them sitting side by side. Okay? Don't buy the television, get the computer monitor. Yes, Jim, great job.
Two questions. What do you think of the Microsoft Surface computers? And secondly, my fear with Chromebook is if you don't have internet access, you're dead in the water.
So two questions. What do I think of the Microsoft Surface? I still haven't made a decision about the Surface yet. You got to remember that Microsoft is not being in really the computer making business for a long time. So they brought out the Surface about 4 years ago and tried to sell as a product. And the first time Windows Upgrade came out, they knocked out all the Surfaces, right? So they can't even get their updates to manage the Surface machines, right? So they seem to be doing better in the last couple of years, but I don't see any compelling reason to buy a Surface. They're usually tablets and they come apart. I just haven't been a Surface fan. But I think probably this year with their new crop they've got out, give it a try. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just worried because they had all those problems in the first couple of years and killed them. Like, I bought a $1,000 Surface. Windows put an upgrade out next week and it didn't work for 6 months. Now, that really made me mad, if I bought a Surface. So I don't know yet. Now, Chromebooks, I just bought a $1,000 Chromebook. I'm fully convinced I use it for everything. And you don't have to be online, you don't have to be connected. It's all on our data hard drive, with all our programs on there. So that's not true. You can certainly use it online or offline. That's true. Not a problem at all.
Just a comment about being online. If you've got a phone, it probably has unlimited data in this day and age, so you've got a signal. So you've always got it with your phone, so you always got a connection.
Yeah, the computer offline is, I don't know if you can use one offline anymore. I guess it's like, what are you going to do offline?
Excel.
Yeah, you can do that, but you can do a lot on a Chromebook offline, sure. Excel, Word, they all run on Chromebooks, and that's nice.
There's enough storage to hold all your files and
Yeah,
whatever.
it's not a problem. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Kathy.
I bought a 4 terabyte external hard drive for about $120.
Yeah, aren't they cheap?
Yeah.
Kathy said she just bought a 4 terabyte external hard drive for about $100. I mean, they really are cheap.
It's like about 130.
Yeah. Let me just, I just want to end the meeting. I know I'm going to end it. I know we have to have a go. Just bear with me for our recording here. All right, it's Ron Brown from SilverCom Computer and Technology Club. This is the end of our meeting. Signing off. Okay. Carol, do you want to?
Yeah, does everybody have a ticket? We will let the new member draw. We're drawing this morning for a player stick. Okay, I'll draw one. You can draw your own. Nobody ever drew, no, one.